From Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. "Well, in our country," said Alice, still panting a little, "you'd generally get to somewhere else if you run very fast for a long time, as we've been doing." "A slow sort of country," said the Queen. "Now here, you see, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. If you want to get somewhere else, you must run at least twice as fast as that."
Hi, this is Ed Driscoll. Welcome to Silicon Graffiti. It's 1926 and we're here at the birth of the National Broadcasting Corporation, America's first radio network and the birth of mass media. From the 1920s to the late 1970s, NBC and the two other networks who would join them, first in radio and then particularly in television, would dominate the news and entertainment that Americans would receive in their homes. They were information monopolies, both in terms of the programming that Americans received and even more so in terms of the advertising revenues which would keep the networks afloat. Flash forward to today. Cable and satellite TV service has hundreds of TV channels available, but that pales in comparison to the internet. Google tracks over 8 billion web pages, and as of August 2008, the blog search engine Technorati noted that they've been tracking 133 million blogs since 2002. The birth of the blogosphere has profoundly transformed old media, but there have been other unforeseen consequences of the internet which are less visible, but have hurt the legacy media arguably even more. Take Craigslist.
You may not know who he is, but you just might have heard of his creation.
Craig is Craig? Oh my God.
Wow.
I want to meet this kid.
You see, Craig Newmark is the Craig behind Craigslist, a San Francisco-based website. Think of Craigslist as the world's largest collection of classified ads, with pages devoted to each of the more than 175 cities it serves. Say you're searching for work in Chicago. Just go to that city's page and look under jobs. Looking for an apartment in Albuquerque? Then search in that town's listings. And if you're in the market for a scooter in San Francisco, the local edition of Craigslist has dozens for sale.
That CBS clip from 2005 helps to explain how Craigslist works, but it doesn't explain how devastating it's been to the newspaper industry. With millions of dollars of revenue suddenly lost to Craigslist, newspapers have had a much harder time paying for journalists. This has impacted all sorts of newspapers, but the subhead of this article from the alternative San Francisco Weekly paper in November of 2005 says it all. The much-loved website is taking millions from Bay Area newspapers and causing layoffs that adversely affect coverage. And its founder's well-intentioned support of citizen journalism has a slim chance of fixing the problem. But it's not just classified advertising revenue that has collapsed. Print advertising in general has been plummeting during this decade as well, as this chart found at newsasaur.blogspot.com indicates. One blogger, who shall remain nameless, rather cheekily said that the video version of the chart would resemble this. And certainly the New York Times, which sets the pace for much of America's legacy journalism, is taking on a lot of water these days.
Welcome to Employment Crossing News. I'm Jessica Campbell. The New York Times, America's third largest newspaper publisher, is considering cutting its stock dividend after reporting a loss. The drop in revenue is being blamed on severance costs as a steeper drop in advertising sales, according to Bloomberg. The payout will be reviewed to determine what is most prudent in the light of the overall market conditions. CEO Janet Robinson said Standard & Poor's cut its debt rating on New York Times to junk after the results increasing the pressure on the company to reduce the dividend that pays the controlling Slalsberger family $25.1 million a year.
The media's Red Queen's race of the last 5 years or so set the stage for their coverage of the 2008 election, as Michael Malone of ABC and Pajamas Media wrote in late October. Picture yourself in your 50s in a job where you've spent 30 years working your way to the top, to the cockpit of power, only to discover that you're presiding over a dying industry. The internet and alternative media are stealing your readers, your advertisers, and your top young talent. Many of your peers shrewdly took golden parachutes and disappeared. Your job doesn't have anywhere near the power and influence it did when you started your climb. The newspaper guild is too weak to protect you anymore, and there is a very good chance you'll lose your job before you cross that finish line, 10 years hence, of retirement and a pension. In other words, you are facing career catastrophe, and desperate times call for desperate measures. Even if you have to risk everything on a single Hail Mary play, even if you have to compromise the principles that got you here. After all, newspapers and network news are doomed anyway. All that counts is keeping them on life support until you can retire. And then the opportunity presents itself. An attractive young candidate whose politics likely match yours, but more importantly, he offers the prospect of a transformed Washington, with the power to fix everything that has gone wrong in your career. With luck, this monolithic single-party government will crush the alternative media via a revived fairness doctrine, reinvigorate unions by getting rid of secret votes, and just maybe be beholden to people like you in the traditional media for getting it there. And besides, as Malone concludes, you tell yourself it's all for the good of the country. Which helps to explain the two great media metaphors of the election. San Francisco, a town known 160 years ago for its expertise in mining for gold, it's the reason why the football team is called the San Francisco 49ers after all, is apparently pretty comfortable with no one ever mining for anything ever again. In January, the editors of the San Francisco Chronicle sat down for an hour with Barack Obama. At the time, he was still an insurgent Democratic candidate for the presidency, running against fellow Senator Hillary Clinton, still largely favored to win her party's nomination at that point. The Chronicle didn't know it, but like the miners 160 years ago, they stumbled over a piece of solid gold with this moment.
So if somebody wants to build a coal-powered plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted.
That quote, which in the old days journalists would have killed to have run as a headline in 72-point type, sat buried in plain sight in the middle of an hour-long video the Chronicle uploaded in January until a blogger stumbled across it in late October, shortly before the election. And then on election night, Wolf Blitzer demonstrated CNN's latest electronic toy.
I want you to watch what we're about to do because you've never seen anything like this on television. There she is, Jessica Yellen. I know you're in Chicago, but we've done something, a hologram. We beamed you in. We beamed you in here into the CNN Election Center. I want to talk to you as I would normally be talking to you if you were really face-to-face with me. I know you're at least 1,000 miles away, but it looks like you're right here. Tell us what's going on in Chicago right now.
Well, there are massive crowds gathered outside here, as you just saw.
CNN didn't plan it this way, but the hologram turned out to be the media metaphor of the presidential election. On November 28th, CNN's Jonathan Mann wrote that the Americans who are comparing President-elect Obama to remarkable predecessors such as Lincoln, FDR, JFK, and Bill Clinton are, quote, putting a lot of faith in a man they barely know. Well, gosh, CNN, whose fault is that? For Silicon Graffiti, I'm Ed Driscoll.